So let's move on to vegetarian, vegan, processed food, moderately mucus forming. Now, some of these things are might be highly mucus forming, but in general, I find that a lot of the vegetarian, vegan cuisine is moderately mucus forming. We got chips, corn chips, potato chips, plantain chips, etc. I find white potato chips to be sort of the absolute worst of the chips to eat, and I was something that I definitely had to get off of fairly early. The corn chips, they continue to sort of eliminate. I would go periods that corn chips was sort of my trigger or my relapse food when I was in a relapse period. It's pretty good bet that there's going to be some corn chips involved, and they sort of eliminated just good enough. But it's not that's something that each individual person sort of will find transitionary triggers, or not triggers, but transitionary items that when their relapse is triggered, they can dive into. It might hurt a little bit, it might not feel as good as when you're eating totally mucusless, and you're going to feel it, but it's going to eliminate a lot better than some other things that are lower down on the list in terms of elimination ability and that kind of thing. And so I would go on and off of periods where I might fall back to corn chips, and then would end up getting to a period where I'd overdo it, because you're really never satisfied with non-food. Things that aren't really truly food, it doesn't satisfy you. That's why, I never overeat fruit. When I eat fruit, I eat just enough. It's intuitive. I don't have to think about it. When I start getting into the mucus, and especially for me with corn chips, then I go off the deep end sometimes, and I can't stop eating them. And we'll talk more about that sometime. But and sometimes I'm careful to try to not share too much of certain kinds of transitionary things, because I know that when we share the different things that we use, sometimes it can actually trigger somebody else that maybe wouldn't have eaten a certain thing, and then they hear you talking about it, and then all of a sudden they're out, grabbing a bag of corn chips or something, so if that happens, I apologize. But another way to think about that is if you can still eat it, if you can still physically stomach and eat some of these foods, then you're not beyond them. So it would not make sense for you to think that, wow, I got triggered back, and if I wouldn't have heard this, maybe I would have never went back to a certain food item. From our perspective, we don't want to be walking on thin ice with the mucus formers like that. We want to permanently get ourselves off of the different mucus formers. And every time, and I've talked before about the spiral, every time we come back around, we go up and down and sort of go in this circular motion. And every time we do that, we might eliminate something else that we never go back to. Or we might get to a point where there's certain things we might only eat once every 10 years. And so the transition can get very intricate, very interesting in that, where I've come to sort of as a humbling rule of thumb, never say never. Brother Air used to say that too. Never say never in terms of thinking that you will never go back to something. To me, that's sort of not the attitude to have. A better attitude is to always be trying to transition forward, to have the attitude that I am, instead of I'm never going to eat such and such ever again, say that tomorrow I'm going to fast, or I'm going to be totally mucusless for the next 10 years. I guess it's a more positive thinking type of approach, because what if you do have a trigger and it ends up being outside of your control and you have some physiological karma that you got to clean up and you end up eating some mess? Don't get depressed. You can't, that you can kind of put yourself in a corner if you don't have the right frame of mind. And so that's even a whole other video. We'll talk about sort of frame of mind strategies, but let's keep going here. Frozen vegan breakfast foods, waffles. A lot of this stuff is made out of wheat and other things. We got hummus, was processed chickpeas. I used that during a couple periods of the transition, but ultimately it gets to constipates the cells of stomach and intestines too much, and stopped really eliminating well, so I got away from it. But lab-grown animal tissue, put that on there because I see that is coming down the pike. They've been funneling all these millions of dollars into these labs to develop meat. It's dead animal flesh, but they didn't have to kill an animal for it. And so, like, Bill Gates thinks that's going to be the new hotness. It's going to be the new thing that I'm sure he'll be putting a lot of money into. And to me, that is ridiculous. Lab-grown animal tissue. Pus is pus. I don't care if you killed the animal or not. It's going to have the same devastating effect on your body in the short and long term. Margarine, nutritional yeast, is acid forming. Pasta, the egg-free variety, pasteurized 100% fruit juice. Okay, so it's not mucus forming, but I got it here because it's potentially acid forming. And so again, this is something that if you're on the transition, you can't get fruit for some reason, you can't juice your own stuff. If you're starting out, and when I started the diet, and for many years, I drank a lot of pasteurized cooked juice, whether I got it in a bottle or had it in the dairy section where it was slightly chilled. But over time, my body started to reject the store-bought juice more and more, to the point where now if I drink it, I don't enjoy it. And so I pretty much stick to eating juicy fruits and juicing juicy fruits. So again, maybe that'll be another video to get into. The plant milks, grain, nuts, seeds, and legumes, soy, rice, all these kind of, any type of milk that's, first of all, it's going to be processed some kind of way to extract these oils and milk out of these most of the time fatty substances, if it's the nuts and that kind of thing. But the milk thing to me is for a very short time on the beginning of the transition. It's not really something that I recommend getting into for long periods of time. And for me, because I was doing lemon enemas and I was on the transition, my ability to deal with these kind of milks really was short-lived. I couldn't. It would be very irritating. Basically turned into, in the way that lactose used to negatively affect my stomach and intestines, the plant-based milks did that. And so at the end of the day, no question, mucus-forming. Plant-based cream or plant-based butters was another thing that I ate for a while. I was into soy butter at the beginning. We put that on the wheat toast, and I had a really fairly bad addiction to the plant-based butters. It wasn't until I don't know, maybe it's been 5 years ago, when I kind of noticed I was going overboard with the amount of oils that I was putting into my body, and some of the things I was putting in might have had like soy lecithin in it, and it was just that kind of thing. And so I pretty much almost cold turkey just stopped eating plant-based butters. I'm done. And took me, it was some withdrawal for a couple days because I had been so into it, but I got more into being able to use other things and make my own sauces, and tomato sauce sort of became a huge condiment that I would put on everything instead of the soy butter and stuff. So again, these are the details of the transition, the reality of the transition. You make up your own transition. You know, you don't have to go, each transition is going to be different. You know, everybody's path is going to be different. And to me, there really is no competition in terms of comparing one's transition to somebody else. And I've noticed sometimes people I've noticed will want to do that. It's sort of raw foodists that have this raw food mentality where there's again a sector of raw foodists that are into this competition minded thing. You know, some of the folks that are into the sports and that kind of thing. And I'm not into that. I'm more interested. I'm a student of the transition. I'm just fascinated to see the different lengths of time that it takes people, the different avenues that people have to go to transition well. And if there's anything I've learned over the years, it's that it is, first of all, an art form, and it's something that each individual person is going to have to sort of figure out for themselves. But for each individual physiology, there is a good, best, and better, best option in terms of what you're eating really at any given time. But that is something that's individual for each person, each physiology. So, let's see, probably should have made a separate video for this. This might be getting long. Plant-based creamer, soy lecithin is some nasty stuff. Yeah, about 5 years ago, I sort of got conscious about how bad soy lecithin is, and then started to realize that it's in everything. A lot of the vegetarian and vegan foods, soy lecithin is in there, and it is just a nasty additive. Tempeh, texturized vegetable protein or mock meats, including soy, etc. Interestingly enough, especially in some older versions of the Mucusless diet, Eric talks about, very, very early old versions of the texturized vegetable protein or the mock meats, and they're actually in the Mucusless diet book, in the transition section under the the vegetarian section, and so I actually in the annotated version in the notes section I get into discussing a little bit of that. Tofu, definitely mucus forming. Vegan baked goods, vegan confections, all type chocolate, ice cream, etc. Vegan cheese substitutes, vegan mayonnaise, vegan whipped cream, yogurts, even the plant-based yogurts, all mucus forming. So yes, I think I will close this one off, and we will pick up the next video with oils, fatty and mildly mucus forming. Peace, love, and breath.